Admiral Krekstar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking down at the small blue planet below. His ship was one of 50 that now surrounded Earth like hungry wolves. Each vessel was the size of a city, covered in weapons that could destroy mountains. The Valdorian Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, and this one would be no different. The Admiral's skin was gray and rough like old leather. 4 arms moved across control panels while his 6 eyes studied the data streaming across holographic displays. Earth looked so peaceful from space. White clouds swirled over blue oceans and brown continents. The humans had no idea what was coming. Report Krekstar growled in his native language, which sounded like gravel being crushed. Commander Zephyl approached with quick, nervous steps. She was younger than the Admiral, with brighter gray skin and only 3 scars across her face. Most Valdorian officers had dozens of battle scars by her age. The planet scan is complete, Admiral, she said, holding up a glowing data pad. The species calls themselves humans. They have barely left their home world. Their largest ships are smaller than our escape pods. Their weapons shoot small metal pieces using chemical explosions. Krekstar laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a cliff. Chemical explosions? Do they still use fire to cook their food too? Yes, Admiral, they do. The laughter stopped. Krekstar stared at his commander to see if she was joking. She was not. Incredible, he muttered, and their military strength. Zephyl touched her datapad, bringing up new information. They are divided into nearly 200 separate nations. Most of their weapons are designed to fight each other, not space threats. Their most powerful bombs use nuclear fission, which is primitive but potentially dangerous to their own planet. They would destroy their own world rather than surrender. Krekstar asked. The data suggests they have done this before on smaller scales. Admiral, they seem to value independence over survival. This was interesting. Most species the Valdorians conquered were smart enough to surrender quickly. Fighting usually meant certain death, and most intelligent beings preferred slavery to extinction. But every species was different. What about their resources? Krekstar asked. Excellent, Admiral. Large deposits of rare metals, vast oceans, perfect for mining, and billions of potential workers. The planet sits at a perfect location for controlling this entire sector of space. Krekstar nodded. This was why the Empire wanted Earth, not for the humans themselves, but for their planet's location and wealth. The humans were just inconvenient occupants who needed to be removed or controlled. Prepare the communication array, he ordered. We will give them the standard ultimatum. Yes, Admiral. The standard ultimatum was simple and had worked on countless worlds. The Empire would demand immediate surrender. The local species would have 7 days to evacuate major cities and prepare for occupation. Those who cooperated would become workers. Those who resisted would be eliminated. It was clean, efficient, and usually prevented unnecessary damage to valuable infrastructure. Zephyl worked at the communication controls, translating the ultimatum into what their computers said was the primary human language, called English. The translation system had studied human broadcasts for months, learning their words and expressions. Ready, Admiral? She reported. Begin transmission. The message reached every human communication device on the planet at the same time. Television screens, computer monitors, phones, and radios all received the signal. The Valdorian technology was advanced enough to override any human security systems on Earth. General Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his Pentagon office when every screen in the building suddenly showed the same image. A tall, gray alien with multiple arms and eyes stared out at him with what could only be described as supreme confidence. Attention, humans of Earth, the alien said in perfect English, though its voice was mechanical and cold. I am Admiral Krekstar of the Valdorian Empire. Your planet has been selected for incorporation into our territories. In London, Dr. Lisa Grant was working late in her laboratory when her computer screen flickered and showed the same alien face. She pushed her glasses up her nose and leaned forward, fascinated, despite the apparent threat. "You have 7 of your days to comply with the following terms," the alien continued. "All military forces will surrender immediately. All major population centers will be evacuated for resource extraction operations. Your species will be relocated to designated areas where you will work for the benefit of the Empire." In homes across the world, families gathered around their televisions and computers, watching in amazement as humanity received its first message from another species. Children pointed at the screen excitedly, while parents tried to process what they were seeing. "Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization," Admiral Krekstar said. "This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. You have 7 days to begin compliance. This message will not be repeated." The transmission ended, leaving billions of humans staring at blank screens. For exactly 37 seconds, Earth was silent. Then a 17-year-old boy named Danny Stevens in Kansas posted a message on social media. "Did that alien dude seriously just threaten us with a straight face while looking like a fish that's been left out in the sun too long?" The post included a side-by-side comparison of Admiral Krekstar and a dried-out bass from a fishing trip. Within minutes, it had been shared thousands of times. In the Pentagon, General Morrison set down his coffee cup and reached for his phone. But before he could call anyone, his aide burst into the office. "Sir, you need to see this," Lieutenant Amy Wilson said. Holding up her phone, the screen showed dozens of memes already spreading across the internet. Admiral Krekstar's face had been edited onto the body of a lobster. Someone had added sunglasses and a fishing hat. Another image showed him with the caption, "When you order an alien invasion from wish.com." "Sir," the lieutenant continued, "the internet is, well, they're making fun of them." Morrison looked at the images, then at the feeds, showing more memes, appearing faster than anyone could count them. Humans were taking their first contact with an alien species and turning it into entertainment. "Get me the president," Morrison said, "and someone find out if our space tracking systems detected these ships before they announce themselves." "Already on it, sir." The Space Force says they've been watching the alien fleet for 6 months. They've been calling them the tourists because they seemed to be taking pictures of everything. Morrison almost smiled. Almost. On the Valdorian flagship Zephyl stared at the data streaming in from human networks. "Admiral, we're receiving responses from the planet." "Excellent. How many surrender requests?" "None, sir. But we're getting images. Modified pictures of you, Admiral. The humans appear to be commenting on your appearance." Krekstar's eyes narrowed. "Show me." The holographic display filled with hundreds of memes, jokes, and parodies. Someone had created a video of the Admiral's ultimatum set to what the computer identified as circus music. Another showed him with a chef's hat and the words, "Today's special, fresh earth, served with a side of extinction." "What does this mean?" Krekstar demanded. "I believe, Admiral, that they are expressing amusement. Amusement. We just threatened to destroy their entire civilization. Yes, sir. They appear to find that, funny." Admiral Krekstar stared at the images of his face edited onto various Earth animals and cartoon characters. In 300 years of military service, conquering dozens of worlds, he had never encountered a response quite like this. The humans were laughing at him. This was not going according to plan. 7 days passed faster than Admiral Krekstar expected. He spent most of that time watching human communications, trying to understand their response to his ultimatum. The memes had not stopped. If anything, they had gotten worse. Someone had created a video game where players fought cartoon versions of Valdorian ships using slingshots and rubber bands. A popular human comedian had done an entire show pretending to be Admiral Krekstar, ordering food at a drive-through restaurant. Children were drawing pictures of aliens and sharing them online with captions like "My new friend from space wants to play." Status report, Krekstar demanded as he entered the bridge on the 7th day. Commander Zeffel looked nervous. Admiral, we have received an official response from the human government. Finally, how many ships are they sending with their surrender delegation? None, sir. They sent a video message. The main screen activated, showing a middle-aged human woman in a dark blue suit standing behind a wooden podium. Behind her sat representatives from nearly every nation on Earth. The setting looked formal and important. I am President Amanda Clark of the United States, speaking on behalf of the United Nations and the people of Earth, the woman said. Her voice was calm and confident. We have carefully considered your ultimatum. Krekstar leaned forward. This was more like it. Finally, these humans were taking the situation seriously. After extensive discussion with world leaders and consultation with our military advisors, we have reached a unanimous decision, President Clark continued. We decline your offer. The Admiral's forearms stopped moving. Decline, President. Clark's expression didn't change. Earth is not for sale, rent, or conquest. We appreciate you taking the time to visit our solar system, but we'll have to pass on your proposal. We wish you a safe journey home. Have a nice day. The transmission ended. Krekstar stared at the blank screen for a full minute. In 3 centuries of military service, no species had ever simply said no to a Valdorian ultimatum. They begged, they negotiated, they offered alternatives, or they surrendered. They did not politely decline, as if refusing an invitation to dinner, sir, Zeffel asked quietly. They declined. Yes, Admiral. They said no. Yes, Admiral. Krekstar's eyes began to glow with anger. Do they not understand what we are offering them? Perhaps they misunderstood the severity of their situation, suggested Commander Velthor, from his position at the weapons console. He was older than Zeffel, with battle scars covering most of his visible skin. Maybe they need a demonstration of our power. Yes, Krekstar said slowly. A demonstration. Something to help them understand that this is not a request. The Admiral studied the tactical display of Earth and its surrounding space. Select a target. Something uninhabited but visible. We will show them what Valdorian weapons can do. Velthor's fingers danced across his controls. There is a small island in what they call the Pacific Ocean. No human settlements. Rocky terrain, approximately 2 kilometers long. Perfect. Prepare the main plasma cannon. Target locked. Admiral, fire. The beam that lanced down from the Valdorian flagship was invisible to human eyes, but its effects were not. The small island simply vanished in a flash of light that could be seen from space. When the energy dissipated, nothing remained but a smooth crater of melted rock beneath the ocean waves. The demonstration was broadcast live on every human news network. Satellite footage showed the island's destruction in perfect detail. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who refused Valdorian ultimatums. Krekstar waited for the panic to begin. Surely now the humans would understand their situation. Their primitive weapons could not defend against such power. Their flimsy ships could not escape Valdorian pursuit. Surrender was their only option. Instead, he got Dr. Kevin Brooks. Dr. Brooks was a geology professor at Stanford University, and apparently someone humans trusted to explain complicated things. He appeared on their news broadcasts within hours of the demonstration, standing in front of a large screen, showing the melted crater. Well, that was impressive, Dr. Brooks said, with a slight smile. The aliens just created one of the most perfect artificial geothermal sites we've ever seen. That crater is going to be incredibly useful for studying underwater volcanic activity. The human interviewer looked confused. Dr. Brooks, they just destroyed an entire island. Oh, I know. And they did a fantastic job. Look at those smooth edges on the crater walls. That's precision work. We've been trying to create controlled geothermal test sites like this for years, but our equipment always leaves rough edges. These aliens have given us a perfect research facility. Watched the interview with growing disbelief. But Dr. Brooks, the interviewer continued, isn't this a demonstration of their power, a threat to our planet? Dr. Brooks shrugged. Maybe. But honestly, we've been blowing up uninhabited islands for weapons testing since the 1940s. The difference is, our explosions are messy and leave radiation. Their beam left clean melted rock that will actually benefit the local ecosystem. In about 10 years, that crater will be a thriving artificial reef. On another channel, Dr. Amy Chen from the Monterey Bay Aquarium was explaining how the new crater would create perfect conditions for deep-sea research. We're already planning dive expeditions, she said excitedly. The thermal properties of that melted rock will attract all kinds of interesting marine life. But the response that truly baffled Krekstar came from Captain Roy Davis of the U.S. Enterprise, an aircraft carrier that happened to be in the Pacific when the demonstration occurred. Yeah, we saw the light show, Captain Davis said during a ship-to-shore radio interview. Pretty impressive fireworks. Though I have to say, it took them almost 30 seconds to vaporize a tiny island. Our submarines can do the same thing in about 5 seconds with conventional torpedoes. But I guess when you're working from orbit, you have to allow for travel time. The interviewer asked if Captain Davis was concerned about the alien threat. Concerned? Not really. Look, we've been tracking their ships for months. Big, slow, obvious targets. They broadcast everything they do on radio frequencies. We monitor routinely. If they wanted to catch us by surprise, they probably shouldn't have announced themselves with a formal ultimatum and a 7-day waiting period. Davis paused, then added, plus, any species that needs to blow up an empty island to prove they're dangerous probably isn't as dangerous as they want us to think. It's like a guy walking into a bar and punching a wall to show how tough he is. Sure, he can hurt the wall, but it makes you wonder if he can actually handle himself in a real fight. On the Valdorian flagship, Zephyl approached her admiral with another datapad full of human responses to the demonstration. Sir, the internet activity has increased significantly. Good fear responses. Not exactly, sir. The main screen filled with new memes. Someone had edited the island explosion to look like a giant alien barbecue grill. Another image showed Admiral Krekstar as a chef, with the caption, Valdorian Island Removal Service. We make mountains into molehills. A particularly popular video showed the explosion in slow motion with peaceful music and the text alien landscaping, when you absolutely, positively need that island gone, overnight. They're still making jokes, Zephyl reported unnecessarily. I can see that, Krekstar growled. Sir, there's something else. Our monitoring stations are detecting increased activity in human space installations. What kind of activity? Communication satellites are being repositioned. Space-based telescopes are focusing on our fleet, and several of their space stations appear to be moving. Krekstar turned away from the meme-filled screen. Moving how? They seem to be changing orbit patterns. Our tactical computers can't determine a purpose, but the movements are too coordinated to be accidental. This was concerning. Most primitive species had fixed space installations that couldn't be moved easily. The fact that humans could relocate their satellites and stations suggested more advanced capabilities than initial scans had indicated. Sir, Velther called from his station. We're receiving another transmission from the planet. Another formal response. No, sir. This appears to be from their military. The screen showed a human in military uniform standing in what looked like a command center. Behind him, other humans worked at computer stations covered in displays and blinking lights. Admiral Krekstar, the human said, I'm General Jake Morrison, United States Space Force. I wanted to thank you for the demonstration. The data we collected on your plasma weapon systems will be very helpful for our defensive planning. Morrison's expression was completely serious. We particularly appreciate the detailed energy signature readings and the orbital firing position data. It's rare to get such complete tactical intelligence on potential threats. Very considerate of you." The general paused, then smiled slightly. "We notice you've been in our solar system for about 6 months now. We've been tracking your fleet since you passed Pluto. Interesting ships, by the way. Large, heavily armed, but not particularly fast or maneuverable. Your engine signatures are quite distinctive." Morrison looked directly into the camera. "The 7-day deadline has passed, Admiral. You're still here. We're interpreting this as acceptance of our position. Earth remains under human control. We suggest you begin planning your departure. Space travel can be dangerous, and we'd hate for anything unfortunate to happen during your journey home." The transmission ended. Krexstar stood motionless on his bridge, processing what he had just heard. The humans had been watching his fleet. For months, they had analyzed his weapons during the demonstration. They spoke of defensive planning and tactical intelligence as if they knew what they were doing. "Zephyr," he said quietly. "Yes, Admiral? How long did you say these humans have had space travel?" "According to our initial scans, they achieved orbital flight approximately 60 years ago, sir, and interplanetary travel. They have sent unmanned probes throughout their solar system and landed crews on their moon, but no permanent colonies outside their home planet." Krexstar stared at the tactical display, showing his 50 massive warships surrounding one small blue planet. For the first time since arriving at Earth, he wondered if he had made a mistake. The humans were still laughing, but now their laughter was beginning to sound less like amusement and more like confidence. That was not a good sign. 2 weeks after the original ultimatum, Admiral Krexstar received a message that changed everything. It didn't come from human governments or military leaders. Instead, it came from an elderly human woman sitting in what appeared to be a simple home office. "Hello, Admiral," the woman said with a friendly smile. "I'm Dr. Helen Wright. I used to work for something called NASA, which is our space agency. These days I make educational videos for people who want to learn about space engineering." Krexstar watched the transmission with growing confusion. This human looked like someone's grandmother, not a military leader or government official. "I've been watching your ships for the past few months," Dr. Wright continued, "and I have to say, they're quite impressive. Very large, very intimidating. But as an engineer, I noticed some interesting design choices." She held up what appeared to be a simple paper diagram. "Your dreadnoughts follow classical intimidation architecture, lots of visible weapons, massive superstructure, aggressive angles. It's designed to make enemies surrender without fighting. Very smart psychology." The old woman's smile grew wider. "But here's the thing about intimidation designs. They prioritize looking scary over being efficient. Your ships are carrying about 3 times more armor than they need, which makes them slow. Your weapons are mounted for maximum visual impact, not optimal firing arcs, and your engines." She shook her head. "Oh my, those poor engines are working so hard to move all that unnecessary mass." Dr. Wright stood up and moved to a whiteboard covered in equations. "It's like bringing a medieval castle to a modern battle. Sure, it looks impressive, but you're burning 10 times more fuel and creating a target that's impossible to miss." Krexstar found himself leaning forward, despite his growing anger. This human was critiquing Valdorian ship design like a teacher correcting homework. "Now, I don't want you to think I'm being critical just to be mean," Dr. Wright said. "Intimidation tactics work very well against most opponents. The problem is, humans have been dealing with bullies for thousands of years. We've gotten pretty good at looking past the scary appearance and figuring out how things actually work." She turned back to the camera. "For example, your plasma weapons are very impressive, but they're also incredibly inefficient. You're using a brute force approach that wastes about 90% of your energy output. It's like using a flamethrower to light a candle. It gets the job done, but there are much better tools available. The transmission switched to show what appeared to be archived footage of human space missions. Humans have a different approach to engineering. We started with very limited resources, so we had to make everything as efficient as possible. Our ships might look small and simple, but they're designed to do more with less. Dr. Wright's voice continued over images of human spacecraft that looked tiny compared to Valdorian vessels. We learned early that the best weapon isn't always the biggest one. Sometimes it's the smartest one. The video ended with Dr. Wright back in her office. Admiral, I hope this has been educational. If you're interested in learning more about human engineering principles, I have a whole series of videos about efficient space travel. They might give you some ideas for improving your own designs. Have a wonderful day. Before Krekstar could respond, another transmission began. This one showed a human military officer standing in what was clearly a command center. Admiral Krekstar. This is General Jake Morrison. I wanted to follow up on Dr. Wright's excellent presentation with some additional information you might find interesting. The screen split to show Morrison on one side and tactical displays on the other. Over the past 2 weeks, we've completed a full analysis of your fleet composition, weapons, systems, and operational capabilities. Your ultimatum broadcast included quite a bit of useful technical data. Morrison gestured to charts and graphs. That meant nothing to Krekstar, but looked disturbingly professional. We've identified the function and approximate power output of your main weapons, mapped your shield frequency patterns, and calculated the fuel efficiency of your propulsion systems. The general's expression was completely neutral, as if he was discussing the weather. We've also been monitoring your communications traffic. Your encryption is actually quite good, but you're broadcasting on frequencies that interfere with some of our radio telescopes. We'd appreciate it if you could adjust your transmission patterns before you leave. Morrison paused, then added, Speaking of leaving, we notice your ships have been maintaining a standard orbital blockade formation for the past 2 weeks. That formation is designed for intimidation and siege operations, but it has some tactical vulnerabilities that concern us. The tactical display showed the positions of all 50 Valdorian ships around Earth. Red lines suddenly appeared, connecting the ships in patterns that highlighted weaknesses in their formation. If a hostile force wanted to attack your fleet, they could exploit these gaps in your coverage to achieve significant tactical advantage. We're sharing this information as a professional courtesy. We'd hate for anything to happen to your ships while they're in our solar system. Morrison looked directly into the camera. Admiral Earth's position is clear. We're not interested in joining your empire, and we're not intimidated by your threats. We are, however, interested in maintaining peaceful relations with all species. If you'd like to establish formal diplomatic contact, we'd be happy to arrange a meeting. The transmission ended, leaving Krekstar staring at tactical displays that showed his fleet's vulnerabilities with terrifying clarity. The humans had analyzed his ships in 2 weeks and identified weaknesses that Valdorian tactical computers had never considered. Sir, Commander, Zephyl said quietly, we're receiving additional transmissions from the planet. More military analysis. No, sir. These appear to be from various human civilians. The next transmission showed a woman in military uniform standing next to what appeared to be a simple cargo ship. I'm Captain Sarah Bell, and this is my ship, the Lucky Strike. She might not look like much, but she's perfect for asteroid mining work. The camera panned across the ship, which looked tiny and fragile compared to Valdorian vessels. We designed her for efficiency rather than intimidation. Small crew, minimal life support, maximum cargo capacity. She can operate in deep space for months without resupply. Captain Bell smiled. The interesting thing about mining ships is that all the equipment has multiple uses. Our rock crushers can process ore, but they can also clear debris fields. Our precision lasers can cut mineral samples, but they work just as well on metal. hull plating, and our navigation computers are designed to track thousands of small, fast-moving objects in three-dimensional space. The implication was clear. Even to Crexstar, a ship designed to track and process asteroids could easily target enemy vessels. Another transmission showed a man in a white lab coat standing in what appeared to be a research facility. "Hello, I'm Dr. Henry Clark from the Institute for Advanced Physics. I understand there's been some discussion about space travel technology." Dr. Clark walked over to a complex machine covered in cables and glowing components. "This is one of our experimental propulsion systems. We call it an Alcubierre drive, though that's a bit of a simplification. Instead of pushing through space, it manipulates the space around the ship." The scientist's explanation was filled with technical terms that Valdorian computers couldn't translate properly, but the basic concept was clear. The humans had developed faster-than-light travel that worked on completely different principles than Valdorian technology. "The wonderful thing about physics," Dr. Clark continued, "is that once you understand the fundamental rules, you can find very creative ways to use them. It's like solving a puzzle where the answer makes everyone say, 'Why didn't I think of that?' More transmissions followed. A woman named Dr. Lisa Kim explained quantum computing systems that seemed to predict enemy movements before they happened. Captain Tony Martinez of something called Space Force gave a tour of what appeared to be a simple space station, but Crexstar noticed that its communication arrays looked suspiciously like weapons targeting systems. Major Danny Torres demonstrated a small fighter craft that moved through space in ways that violated everything Crexstar knew about physics. The ship seemed to ignore inertia, changing direction without visible thrust and accelerating past speeds that should have torn it apart. "The key to human spaceflight," Torres explained while performing impossible maneuvers, "is that we don't fight against the laws of physics. We partner with them. Once you stop thinking of space as empty and start thinking of it as a medium you can manipulate, all sorts of interesting possibilities open up." Commander Julie Adams appeared next, standing in front of what she called a research vessel. Behind her, the ship's hull seemed to shimmer and change shape as Crexstar watched. "This is the Adaptive," Adams said. "She's designed for deep space exploration, but like most human ships, she's multifunctional. Her hull can reconfigure for different mission profiles. Communication array one day, defensive platform the next, cargo hauler the day after that." The ship's transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Weapon ports appeared where sensors had been moments before. Armor plating shifted to cover vulnerable areas. The entire vessel seemed to rebuild itself while Adams spoke. "Humans have always believed in adaptability," she continued. "We design our tools to serve multiple purposes because we never know what challenges we'll face. A mining laser becomes a cutting tool. A cargo ship becomes a troop transport. A research station becomes a fortress." The final transmission came from someone who introduced herself as Colonel Pete Williams. He was standing in what appeared to be a simple military office, but the walls were covered with displays showing star charts and fleet movements. "Admiral Crexstar," Williams said. "We've been monitoring your communications with your home fleet. We understand that this situation is unusual for the Valdorian Empire. Most species you encounter surrender immediately or fight with primitive weapons." Williams walked over to a large display showing the local galactic region. "Humans represent a different challenge. We've had time to prepare, we've studied your technology, and we've developed countermeasures specifically designed for threats like yours." The colonel's expression was serious but not hostile. "We don't want a war, Admiral. Wars are expensive, destructive, and unpredictable. But we want you to understand that Earth is prepared for any outcome." Williams gestured to the star chart. "Your empire controls a significant portion of this galactic arm, but you've never encountered a species with our particular combination of technologies and tactics. We've spent centuries fighting enemies with superior numbers, better weapons, And more resources. We've gotten very good at winning those fights. The transmission showed footage of human military exercises that looked disturbingly sophisticated. Ships that could disappear from sensors, weapons that bent space itself, and defensive systems that seemed to anticipate attacks before they happened. Admiral Williams concluded, Earth extends an invitation for peaceful contact. We're always interested in learning about new cultures and sharing knowledge with friendly neighbors. But we want to be clear about our position. Earth is not available for conquest, and any attempt to take it by force will be met with an appropriate response. The transmission ended with a simple statement. We hope you'll make the right choice. Krex stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by tactical displays that no longer made sense. The humans had revealed capabilities that shouldn't exist. Technology that violated known physics. Weapons that used science as ammunition. For the first time in 3 centuries of military service, Admiral Krexstar was beginning to wonder if the Valdorian Empire had made a terrible mistake. The humans were still laughing, but now their laughter sounded like the confident amusement of predators who had been playing with their prey all along. Admiral Krexstar called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. The conference room aboard his flagship had seen hundreds of tactical briefings over the years, but never one quite like this. Report, he ordered, as his officers took their positions around the holographic display table. Commander, Zephyl activated her datapad with nervous fingers. Admiral, our intelligence analysis of human capabilities is ... concerning. How concerning, sir? Everything we thought we knew about this species appears to be wrong. The holographic display filled with images and data collected over the past month. Krexstar studied the information with growing unease. Their industrial capacity is far greater than initial estimates, Zephyl continued. What we thought were primitive manufacturing facilities are actually highly automated production centers. They can build complex machinery faster than most advanced civilizations. Commander Velthar leaned forward. Sir, their military technology is not primitive. It's deliberately simple. There's a difference. Explain. Valdorian weapons use brute force approaches that require massive energy systems, Valdor said. Human weapons use what they call elegant solutions, smaller, more efficient designs that achieve the same results with less resources. The display showed side-by-side comparisons of Valdorian and human technology. The differences were startling. Their ships look small because they don't waste space on unnecessary armor or intimidation features, Velthar continued. Every component serves multiple purposes. A communication array doubles as a sensor system and can be reconfigured as a weapon in emergency situations. Krexstar studied the technical specifications, and they're faster than light travel. Sir, they're using spatial manipulation technology that our scientists considered theoretically impossible. Instead of brute forcing their way through space, they convinced space to move around them. The Admiral's forehands clenched into fists. Are you telling me that these primitive humans have superior technology? Not superior, sir. Different? They approach problems from angles we never considered. Chief Intelligence Officer Mexstar spoke up from his position at the end of the table. He was the oldest officer present, with scars covering most of his gray skin. Admiral, I've been analyzing human culture and history. I believe we may have misunderstood their fundamental nature. Go on. We assumed they were a typical developing species, tribal, competitive, focused on internal conflicts. But their history shows something else entirely. The display changed to show historical data about human civilization. They have spent thousands of years fighting enemies with superior numbers, better technology, and more resources. They've developed an entire military philosophy based on defeating stronger opponents. Mexstar activated a series of historical examples. Small human armies defeating much larger forces through superior tactics. Primitive humans using simple weapons to defeat opponents with advanced technology. Entire civilizations surviving against impossible odds through creativity and adaptation. What are you saying? Krekstar demanded. Sir, humans specialize in defeating enemies exactly like us. Large, powerful, technologically advanced civilizations that rely on intimidation and overwhelming force. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Furthermore, Mextar continued, their response to our ultimatum follows a pattern we see throughout their history. When faced with a superior enemy, humans often pretend to be weaker than they actually are, while gathering intelligence and preparing countermeasures. Commander Zephyl pulled up new data. Sir, we've detected increased activity throughout their solar system. Ships moving between planets, construction projects accelerating, and communication traffic that our computers cannot decode. What kind of construction projects? Unknown, Admiral. The structures are being built in locations where our sensors cannot get clear readings. Behind moons, inside asteroid fields, in the shadow of their gas giant planets. Krekstar studied the tactical display showing the human solar system. Red dots marked areas of suspicious activity. There were far more red dots than he was comfortable with. Sir, Valthor said quietly, I believe the humans have been preparing for our arrival since we entered their star system. Impossible. They had no way of knowing we were coming. Admiral, they detected our ships 6 months ago. They've been calling us the tourists because they thought we were exploring. But what if they knew exactly what we were from the beginning? The thought sent a chill through Krekstar's spine. You're suggesting this entire situation has been orchestrated. Think about it, sir. Their response has been too coordinated, too confident. Most primitive species panic when faced with superior force. Humans immediately began making jokes while simultaneously gathering detailed intelligence on our capabilities. Mextar activated another display. Admiral, I've been monitoring human entertainment networks. The jokes they make about us aren't random. They're specifically designed to make us underestimate their seriousness while gathering data on our psychology. What do you mean? Every meme, every comedy video, every casual dismissal of our threats has been carefully crafted to provoke specific responses from us. They wanted us to demonstrate our weapons so they could analyze them. They wanted us to reveal our tactical formations so they could identify weaknesses. Krekstar stared at the evidence accumulating on the displays around him. Are you telling me that these humans have been manipulating us from the beginning? Sir, I believe they've been studying Valdorian psychology and tactics for months, preparing for this exact scenario. A new transmission alert interrupted the meeting. Zephyl checked her console and looked up with confusion. Admiral, we're receiving another broadcast from the planet. This one is different. Show me. The main screen activated to show a woman in military uniform standing in what was clearly a command center. Behind her, dozens of humans worked at control stations monitoring displays that showed familiar-looking ship formations. Admiral Krekstar, the woman said. I'm Dr. Amanda Foster, military historian and strategic analyst. I thought you might be interested in some historical context for your current situation. Dr. Forster moved to stand beside a large display, showing what appeared to be historical battles. Humans have been dealing with invasion scenarios for thousands of years. We've developed quite a bit of expertise in asymmetric warfare. That's what we call fighting enemies who are bigger and stronger than we are. The display showed various historical examples. Small armies defeating larger ones. Primitive civilizations resisting technologically advanced invaders, and successful defensive strategies against overwhelming odds. The key to human survival has always been preparation and adaptability, Dr. Foster continued. We study our potential enemies, learn their strengths and weaknesses, and develop countermeasures specifically designed for each threat. She gestured to a tactical display that looked disturbingly familiar. For example, we've been monitoring your fleet since you arrived. We've analyzed your ship designs, weapon systems, communication patterns, and tactical formations. We've identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in your current deployment. The display highlighted weak points in the Valdorian formation that Krekstar recognized with growing horror. These were classified tactical assessments that should have been impossible for humans to determine. We've also been studying Valdorian history and culture, Dr. Foster said. Your empire has conquered 127 worlds, using the same basic strategy: overwhelming force, intimidation displays, and ultimatums that rely on fear to achieve surrender, without actual combat. She smiled slightly. The problem is, that strategy only works against species that can be intimidated. Humans have spent our entire evolutionary history dealing with predators, natural disasters, and hostile environments. We don't scare easily. The transmission showed footage of human military exercises that looked far more advanced than anything Krekstar had expected. Ships moving in formations that seemed to anticipate enemy actions, weapon systems that targeted multiple threats simultaneously, and defensive technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Admiral, I want you to understand something important, Dr. Foster said. Everything you've seen from Earth over the past month has been carefully planned. The jokes, the casual dismissal of your threats, the apparent lack of military response. All of it was designed to give you a false sense of security while we prepared for every possible scenario. The display changed to show real-time positions of human ships throughout the solar system. There were far more vessels than Valdorian sensors had detected, positioned in locations that would allow them to attack the alien fleet from multiple directions simultaneously. We don't want a war, Admiral, Dr. Foster continued. Wars are wasteful and unpredictable. But we want you to understand that Earth has been preparing for this possibility since the day your ships appeared on our sensors. She looked directly into the camera. You came here expecting to find a primitive, frightened civilization that would surrender without a fight. Instead, you found a species that has spent centuries perfecting the art of defeating enemies, exactly like you. The transmission ended with a simple message. Choose wisely, Admiral. The next move is yours. Krekstar stood motionless in his command center, surrounded by displays that showed his fleet's vulnerabilities and the true extent of human preparedness. For the first time in his long military career, he was beginning to understand what it felt like to be outmaneuvered by a supposedly inferior enemy. Sir, Zephyl said quietly, what are your orders? Krekstar studied the tactical displays, showing his 50 warships surrounded by human vessels he hadn't even known existed. The species he had dismissed as primitive had been studying him for months, learning his weaknesses, preparing countermeasures, and allowing him to reveal every detail of Valdorian capabilities. The humans had been playing a game he didn't even know he was part of, and they had been winning from the very beginning. Sir, Zephyl repeated. Admiral Krekstar realized that his next decision would either save his fleet or doom it. The humans had given him all the information. He needed to make the right choice. The question was whether his pride would let him make it. The final transmission came at dawn, Earth time. Admiral Krekstar was alone on his bridge, staring at tactical displays that showed his fleet surrounded by human vessels he could barely detect. When the communication alert sounded, he almost didn't answer it. The message wasn't a threat or a demand. It was an invitation. Admiral Krekstar. The transmission began. This is Colonel Pete Williams. We would like to invite you to observe a routine training exercise. Consider this a professional courtesy between military organizations. Krekstar watched as the main screen showed coordinates in the asteroid belt, far from Earth and any populated areas. We realize there may have been some misunderstandings about our respective capabilities. To avoid any unfortunate incidents, we'd like to clarify Earth's defensive posture. The Colonel's expression was completely neutral. Please consider this an educational demonstration. No weapons will be targeted at your fleet, and you're welcome to observe from a safe distance." "Admiral," Commander Zeffel said quietly, "it could be a trap." "Everything about this situation has been a trap," Krekstar replied. "The question is whether we're smart enough to recognize it." He activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, proceed to the designated coordinates. Maintain defensive formation, but do not charge weapons. We are observing only." The Valdorian fleet moved slowly toward the asteroid belt, their massive ships lumbering through space like ancient beasts. As they approached the coordinates, Krekstar's sensors detected human vessels scattered throughout the region. What he saw changed everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. The ships that emerged from hiding among the asteroids bore no resemblance to the simple craft his intelligence reports had described. They moved through space like living things, bending and flowing around obstacles that should have been impossible to navigate. Some vessels seemed to disappear entirely before reappearing in completely different locations. "By the void," Velthar whispered from his position at the tactical station. "How are they moving like that?" The answer came from Captain Sarah Bell, whose voice transmitted clearly, despite the fact that her ship was somehow invisible to Valdorian sensors. "The key to human spaceflight," she explained as her vessel materialized directly in front of Krekstar's flagship, "is that we don't fight against physics. We partner with it." Her ship, the Lucky Strike, looked nothing like the simple mining vessel she had described weeks earlier. The hull seemed to flow and reshape itself as Krekstar watched, adapting to different functions in real time. "This is a standard mining operation," Bell continued, as her ship approached a large asteroid. "We're extracting valuable minerals, while simultaneously mapping gravitational anomalies and testing new navigation systems." What happened next defied every law of physics, Krekstar understood. Instead of using crude explosives or beam weapons, Bell's ship seemed to convince the asteroid to disassemble itself. The rock came apart in perfectly organized sections, sorted by mineral content, while the waste material was instantly converted into useful construction components. "Efficiency through adaptability," Bell explained cheerfully. "Why waste energy destroying things when you can convince them to become something more useful?" Other human ships joined the demonstration. Major Danny Torres piloted a fighter craft that moved through the asteroid field as if the laws of inertia didn't apply to it. The ship changed direction without visible thrust, accelerated past impossible speeds, and passed through solid rock as if it wasn't there. "Human fighter doctrine is based on unpredictability," Torres explained while performing maneuvers that should have torn his ship apart. "If the enemy can't predict where you'll be, they can't hit you. And if they can't hit you, their superior firepower doesn't matter." Commander Julie Adams appeared next, her research vessel reconfiguring itself in real time. Krekstar watched in fascination as the ship transformed from a peaceful exploration craft into something that looked disturbingly like a weapons platform. "The Adaptive lives up to her name," Adams said as weapon ports appeared where sensor arrays had been moments before. "Human ships are designed to serve multiple functions because we never know what challenges we'll face. Research vessel one day, defensive platform the next." But the real shock came when Captain Tony Martinez demonstrated what humans called routine system maintenance on a nearby space station. The station hadn't been there when the Valdorian fleet arrived at the coordinates. "Sorry we're a bit late," Martinez said, as the massive structure materialized around his ship. "We had to assemble the facility first. Human space architecture is modular. We can build whatever we need, wherever we need it." Krekstar watched in stunned silence as the space station continued to grow, adding sections and components that appeared from nowhere. Within minutes, what had been empty space contained a fully operational military installation. "The wonderful thing about human engineering," Dr. Helen Wright's voice added from somewhere within the station, "is that we design everything to be multi-purpose. This station can serve as a research facility, a manufacturing center, a defensive platform, or a diplomatic meeting place, depending on what's needed. The demonstration continued with displays of technology that shouldn't exist, weapons that converted energy into matter, engines that manipulated space-time itself, and defensive systems that seemed to predict attacks before they happened. But the most unsettling part wasn't the technology, it was the casual competence with which the humans operated it. They weren't showing off or trying to intimidate. They were simply working, performing routine operations that happened to showcase capabilities that made Valdorian weapons look like ancient relics. "Admiral," Dr. Amanda Foster's voice came through. "The communication system. We hope this demonstration has been educational. As you can see, Earth's defensive capabilities are somewhat more advanced than your initial scans indicated." The main screen activated to show Dr. Foster standing in what appeared to be the command center of the newly constructed space station. Behind her, tactical displays showed the positions of every ship in the area, including Valdorian vessels that thought they were hidden. "We want to be clear about something," Dr. Foster continued. "Everything you've seen today represents standard human technology. Nothing experimental, nothing special. Just the tools we use for everyday operations in space." She gestured to displays showing human activities throughout the solar system. "We have similar installations throughout our star system, all connected through communication networks that allow for coordinated response to any threat." The tactical displays zoomed out to show the true scope of human presence in space. Krextar realized that his fleet wasn't surrounding Earth. Earth was surrounding his fleet. "Admiral, we've prepared a proposal for you," Dr. Foster said. "Earth would like to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Valdorian Empire. We're always interested in learning about new cultures and sharing knowledge with peaceful neighbors." The proposal appeared on Krextar's screens, a detailed document outlining trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and mutual defense treaties. It was far more generous than anything the Valdorians had ever offered to conquered species. "We believe the galaxy is big enough for all of us," Dr. Foster continued. "Competition and conflict are wasteful when cooperation and trade are so much more profitable for everyone involved." She paused, then added, with a slight smile, "Of course, if the Valdorian Empire prefers to maintain its current expansion policies, Earth is prepared to respond appropriately. We've learned quite a bit about your tactics and capabilities over the past few months." The transmission ended with President Amanda Clark appearing on screen from what appeared to be her office aboard a massive orbital platform that definitely hadn't been there that morning. "Admiral Krextar, the choice is yours," President Clark said with calm dignity. "Earth extends an invitation for peaceful contact and mutual cooperation. We hope you'll find our proposal acceptable." She looked directly into the camera, with eyes that showed no fear, only confidence. "If not, we understand. The galaxy is dangerous, and every species must make its own choices about how to survive. We just want to make sure those choices are informed ones." The transmission ended with a simple message: "We look forward to your response." Krextar stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by tactical displays that now showed the true situation. His 50 warships were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely outmaneuvered by a species he had dismissed as primitive. But more than that, the humans had offered him something no Valdorian admiral had ever received from a defeated enemy: respect, dignity, and a chance to walk away with honor intact. Admiral Zeffel said quietly, "What are your orders?" Krextar looked at the diplomatic proposal still glowing on his screens. It was more generous than anything his empire had ever offered, more respectful than any surrender he had ever received. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he said finally. "Yes, sir." The main screen activated to show President Clark waiting patiently in her orbital office. Behind her, Krextar could see Earth turning slowly in space, blue and beautiful and completely unafraid. President Clark, he said, his voice formal but respectful. The Valdorian Empire accepts your proposal for diplomatic relations. Clark's smile was warm and genuine. Excellent, Admiral. We're looking forward to a long and productive relationship. However, Krextar continued, I must ask why. Your species could have destroyed my fleet at any time. Why offer mercy to those who threatened you? President Clark considered the question for a moment. Admiral, humans learned long ago that today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally. We'd rather have the Valdorian Empire as friends than as threats. She paused, then added, besides, we're going to need all the allies we can get when we start expanding into the galaxy. Space is big, and there are probably species out there that make both our civilizations look primitive. Krextar found himself laughing, actually laughing for the first time since arriving at Earth. You're already planning your own expansion. Of course, Clark replied with a grin. Humans don't stay in one place very long. We get restless. As his fleet began the long journey back to Valdorian space, Admiral Krextar composed his official report. It was perhaps the strangest document ever filed in the Empire's military archives. Species designation, human threat assessment, extreme. Recommendation, immediate diplomatic contact for alliance negotiations. Addendum, do not attempt conquest under any circumstances. They find it amusing, and their sense of humor is more dangerous than their weapons. The report concluded with a personal note that would be discussed in Valdorian military academies for generations. The humans never stopped laughing because they were never afraid. They knew from the beginning that they could destroy us whenever they chose. The laughter wasn't defiance, it was confidence. They let us leave because they're planning to visit us. Earth's final transmission reached the Valdorian fleet as they passed the outer planets of the solar system. It wasn't a threat or a warning, it was an advertisement. Thanks for visiting Earth. Don't forget to rate your experience and recommend us to friends. 5 stars means the galaxy to us. Below the cheerful message was a simple addition, Earth. Tourism board, coming to a star system near you. Admiral Krextar realized that humanity's expansion into the galaxy wouldn't be a conquest. It would be an invitation, and somehow, that was far more terrifying than any threat they could have made.